Stop Killing Games. This is an initiative in gaming that I've talked about in the past, but it is worth bringing up again because there have been some significant developments on this front, with Stop Killing Games itself actually having reached major milestones for unexpected reasons. It basically came down to a common enemy kind of instigating the crowd to rally for Stop Killing Games and pushing it past its goal. Now, what is Stop Killing Games? Well, to contextualize that, we first have to talk about Ubisoft. This is a company that has come out and said that gamers will have to get comfortable with the idea of not owning their games, to which gamers collectively gave Ubisoft the middle finger. This topic came about because of specifically this video game titled The Crew, an online racing game that has shut down completely, but not only that, but the game has been completely removed from players' libraries. So not only is the game not functional, the purchase that you made has literally been stripped from players who bought The Crew. And basically, Stop Killing Games is an initiative that started because of that, because of the belief that companies shouldn't have the right to take products away from you, and they shouldn't have the ability to just completely disable a product that you purchase. They have to, on some level, ensure that the game remains active in players' libraries and in some form of functional state. It doesn't mean they have to keep up and continue updating an online game or anything of the sort, but keep it in a functional enough state where players can still, on some level, access the title and engage with it. In the case of The Crew, for example, many people feel as though the game can get away with having some kind of offline mode patch. The game has been shut down and that part's fine. The online support for it doesn't have to go on, but some kind of offline mode or some kind of ability for players to host their private servers. That's what people mean by leaving a game in some kind of functional, playable state where the game just doesn't disappear from the face of the planet. But with no regulations and laws forcing companies to essentially take measures for games preservation and to ensure that people maintain the products that they've purchased, we're seeing situations like this where Ubisoft can get away with completely stripping people's license for The Crew weeks after its shutdown. And it led to situations where we saw stuff like this, where when people tried to run The Crew, it would ask for an activation code or a CD key because the game was literally nuked from all storefronts. And this is the future that awaits not only multiplayer games or online games, but also single-player games, with Ubisoft in particular having enacted online requirements where even for physical versions of their releases, you need a one-time internet connection to download essentially a patch that acts as a key for the game to be able to run. And this was done for Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. It was done for Star Wars Outlaws, its physical edition, as well as the most recent release from Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed Shadows. Much like with The Crew, one day when Ubisoft decides to end services for these games, and even if it takes decades, one day it'll happen, it means that those physical releases that are single-player games may end up being completely inaccessible, may be stripped from players' libraries, may see a similar fate as The Crew, which is where this whole Stop Killing Games initiative comes from. Ubisoft kind of kickstarted it, but this is an initiative that aims to tackle this issue across the entire games industry who've gotten too comfortable with the idea of not preserving games and stripping players' games from their libraries. Now, the good news is that the Stop Killing Games initiative has reached some major milestones, in particular, the European Citizens Initiative, which is essentially a petition for the European Union to take a look at this issue. And it needed 1 million+ signatures for it to get to that point where government officials will take this seriously. And recently, it more than surpassed that milestone. You can see right here, over 1.2 million signatures, which makes it a likely scenario that the European Union will in fact take a look at this and potentially output legislation that will aim to tackle these issues based on what the European Union citizens are relaying in terms of concerns about games preservation and the way companies are stripping away games from players who have spent their hard-earned money to buy these products that eventually fade away from existence and no longer are accessible or functional and offer no refunds or restitution. And then on top of that, Stop Killing Games is also encouraging people in the UK to sign the UK government petition When 100,000 signatures are reached with this petition, new law will be considered to be brought before Parliament for debate to prohibit publishers from destroying video games that customers have already paid for. And that has more than surpassed the goal with now over 180,000 signatures, and that number is rapidly growing. You know what else has rapidly grown? My fondness for the game that is the sponsor of today's video, RAIDOU Remastered: The Mystery of the Soulless Army. If you're a fan of Atlas titles like the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona series, this game could be right up your alley. I missed the boat when it first came out back in 2006 for the PlayStation 2, known as Devil Summoner Raidou Kuzunoha vs. the Soulless Army then, so my interest was piqued when this remaster was announced, especially being a fan of its unique Taisho-era Japan setting and noir detective story vibes. After having played it, I gotta say, I've been really enjoying it. Something cool that RAIDOU Remastered does is it takes the traditionally turn-based combat of the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona series and makes it real-time combat, all while retaining strategic elements from its turn-based counterparts like exploiting enemies' elemental weaknesses and the demon collecting and summoning mechanic that is so iconic to these Atlas franchises. Beyond that, this remaster just makes tons of enhancements and quality of life changes from the original. Visually, I mean, it's a massive upgrade with high resolution and performance, new HD models made from scratch, and fully 3D environments, with a presentation being further enhanced by fully voiced characters. There are new features and conveniences as well, like the ability to quick save and access this thing called the Detective Journal that acts as both a tutorial guide and a glossary. Combat has been revamped with 360-degree free camera control that was not present in the original, new special skills to vary up combat, the ability to summon 2 demons at once to fight alongside you instead of the one from the original, enhanced AI for summoned demons, a new jump mechanic, and more. And with over 120 demons to collect, combat and shaping your party remains fresh throughout the whole experience. And the addition of new side quests also means you just get more content than you did with the original game. RAIDOU Remastered is out right now, and you can learn more and buy the game yourself by using my link in the description and comment section below. Now, what's wild is that this Stop Killing Games movement, while it had a lot of traction initially, it eventually kind of petered out and flatlined, and many believe that ultimately this was an initiative and movement that wasn't going to get the required signatures. Keep in mind that petitions do have deadlines, and this Stop Killing Games initiative was kickstarted almost a year ago, and it had a year to get all of the required signatures, and that time would be by the end of July. Just 2 weeks ago, the European Citizens Initiative was looking at less than half of the required 1 million signatures. It's only in the last couple of days that this initiative managed to reach its goal, and then some. You can see right here that it was only on July 2nd, 2025, that the Stop Killing Games initiative, the European Union Citizens Initiative, hit over 800,000 signatures, and then later that day managed to surpass over 900,000 signatures, and then the next day it managed to hit 1 million signatures total. Fast forward to today, July 9th, and this initiative is going really strong with almost 1.3 million signatures for this petition. So what exactly instigated this last-minute sudden surge of signatures for this petition? What caused so many people to suddenly, after the initiative had kind of flatlined, rally towards Stop Killing Games? Well, this all centers around an individual going by the username Pirate Software. He's a streamer who also goes by the name Thor, and you can see right here that shortly after the initiative had begun almost a year ago, he put out the following video in which he highlighted his reasons for why he doesn't agree with this movement, why he doesn't want this initiative to succeed, why he wants this initiative to die. And this is a video that garnered 1.3 million views as of today. And he not only released this video, he also released a part 2 where he further detailed his reasoning for why he does not like this initiative at all. Now, for the longest time, Ross Scott, who is the individual who kickstarted the Stop Killing Games initiative, the man leading the charge on this movement, decided to not want to start drama. But there came a point where Ross Scott felt like Pirate Software, Thor's videos, did significant enough harm through what he felt was misinformation and basically misconstruing what the intent of Stop Killing Games was, that he felt like he had to put out a video essentially calling out Pirate Software or Thor and kind of highlighting the fact that currently it's looking like Stop Killing Games will not achieve its goal. This was around the time when signatures were looking at roughly over 450,000 signatures, which is significant, but not close to the 1 million required signatures. And there was only like a month or two left before this initiative would die. So in this video, which has now garnered over 764,000 views, and in which he goes in extensive detail clarifying all of the areas where he felt that Pirate Software or Thor misrepresented the cause, he kind of breaks everything down and highlights his frustration at not the fact that Pirate Software or Thor is disagreeing with the movement, but the fact that he's disagreeing with criticisms that are misinformed and that represents the cause completely erroneously. And I'll show you some of the greatest hits from this video, but you can watch this hour-long video for yourself if you so desire by going to Ross Scott's YouTube channel, Accursed Farms.
Okay, I really don't want to do this next part, but it's become a liability for the campaign for me not to. Our biggest critic by far is YouTuber and streamer Pirate Software, who goes by Thor. If your only exposure to Stop Killing Games has been this video, then you've been misinformed. This video is by someone who does not understand the campaign, has been trying to stop it, and has been making up what it is about. I am not saying that lightly. I will prove it in a minute. Thor's coverage has been bigger than literally anyone else on those lists. This video came out right as we were building momentum. Then, except for one boost in Germany, the signatures started drying up like clockwork. So I quickly made this video trying to clear up all misconceptions and concerns about the initiative. To this day, I'm still getting frequent comments and emails about the same falsehoods about the campaign that originated in this video. Thor does not understand what Stop Killing Games is. Here it is in his words.
So for those who don't understand, the Stop Killing Games initiatives is basically, we don't want single-player games to have DRM that the developers can turn off and thus render the single-player games inactive anymore. This is what they want to change. They need to be specific that they're talking about single-player games that do not need a server to support them. And as much as they want it to be about specifically games where it is a single-player game that has always online functionality, it would impact every live service game that exists, instead of just targeting single-player, always online games.
No, that's not what it is. Stop Killing Games includes single-player games, but nothing about it is specific to them. He completely made that up, and I have no idea where he got that impression. It's the first line on the website. Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. The initiative is about requiring publishers to have end-of-life plans for games they've sold to customers in the future. So when they shut them down, customers can continue running them without their support. We don't make a distinction between single-player and multiplayer games. That's because the law doesn't either. So why make this even harder? Both the movement and the law are making distinctions on how games are sold. Also, that part he said about it affecting all live service games, yes and no. It would affect most live service games in the future, but the initiative is not retroactive. So that's one thing Thor doesn't understand, but he also seems to think this is about converting multiplayer games to single player. Once again, he made that up. And I have no idea why he thought that.
Transitioning an entire multiplayer server-side game into a single-player video game, which means rebalancing the entire experience around single-player, rebuilding everything in the entire game. How are you going to do that with Final Fantasy XIV? You're just going to make all the raids soloable? Imagine the day that World of Warcraft shuts down, and suddenly you have to make it a single-player game for every individual that ever bought the game. That's what they're asking for.
No.
Because they would have to sunset live service games as a single-player experience. The idea that suddenly you need to make every single live service game playable single player offline? No, dude.
Correct. No.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single player games.
Oh, he's so close. He's so close to getting it.
It is vague, and because of that, it will impact.
It's almost as if that's not what the initiative is asking for. But those were his streams with a smaller audience. What does he say in his big YouTube video with over 1 million views that he had time to research?
If we're trying to kill off the practice of developers putting together a live service game, pitching it as a single-player experience, and then taking away support in the future.
Now he's changed it again and is making up how it's about single-player games are advertised. What is he doing?
It needs to be specific about the business practice it's trying to defeat, which is specifically companies that are doing this under the guise of it being a single-player game, but adding online-only functionality that is not necessary and doesn't add any gameplay elements. That's the problem.
No, that's not it at all.
And there are some people that'll say, well, just make it all single-player.
Like
well,
you?
I've explained that doesn't make any sense in the first place. These are two different ideologies, and that's okay to have two different ideologies. I just won't agree with it.
But those aren't the ideologies. Nothing in the initiative is asking to convert games to single-player.
Nowhere in there does it say that it's directly targeting always online single-player games.
Yeah, so why does he keep bringing it up? This is a total red herring.
If we don't like the idea of live service games as a whole, I get it. Don't play live service games then. Don't agree to those terms.
No, he's getting a new thing wrong now. We're not against them existing. We're against them being destroyed with no recourse for the customer. Just use logic. If we didn't like them in the first place, why would we care if they're being destroyed? He says he gets it, but he doesn't.
Let's talk about the actual bad business practices. In the case that a studio is making a live service game and they sell it to you as a product, they say that you are purchasing the game or you are buying the game, when in reality you're actually purchasing or buying a license to that game. I think that we should be fighting about that. The initiative is not trying to call that out specifically. It's trying to say that all games need to stay in a functionable, playable state.
Yes!
Which is not calling out the language that is being used to manipulate the player. Call that out specifically.
Okay, I don't know if he's doing this intentionally. I'll be charitable and assume he's not. But this is some serious obfuscation. He's complaining that the initiative isn't focused on another topic he made up. Our problem is not with licenses failing to inform people. Blizzard says they can take away your purchase for no reason. That sounds pretty clear to me. Our problem is those terms are so hostile to consumers and the medium that they should be taken off the table entirely. This needs regulation.
If you try to tell me that every studio needs to run their live service game indefinitely or not want to run one at all, then no one's going to run them.
Oh no! He wheeled out that line about publishers having to support the game forever. He was literally watching the video earlier where it says it won't do that in big letters. That wasn't enough. We just can't stop gamers from going there, even when we spell it out. I admit, guys, this part hurts. To see the biggest voice on this issue get it wrong again and again and again, then put that same wrong information on blast to a far bigger audience than we can reach. It hurts. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand what we're asking for.
You want that to stay in a functional, playable state. That means the devs have to release either server binaries or somehow carve off the game to be a single-player experience now.
That's better, but he's still talking about converting the single-player right to the end. He never completely got it. That means the majority of his critique is about things it would not do. Like kill all MMOs.
If that passes, enjoy never playing an MMO again for the rest of your life and taking away from every other person that plays MMOs.
It really wouldn't. And I've explained why in that video, but the short version is companies would have to stop liking money for that to happen. Some people did get hung up on this part. A reasonably playable or functional state. True, that is not 100% specific. There are reasons for that. You know how in law, police can stop a suspect with reasonable suspicion? Or a jury finds someone guilty beyond all reasonable doubt? That's because the number of situations you face are so varied that the law has to inject some common sense somewhere. It's the same with games. This sentence is an olive branch to publishers. I've heard complaints this isn't specific enough. Okay, but you know what the alternative to this would be? Here, I'll show you. The game must be fully functional and contain 100% of all features as advertised. So as a publisher, which requirement would you rather meet? More importantly, this sentence shows the EU Commission that we're acting in good faith and trying to find a balance. See, the initiative isn't even a proposed bill. It's a negotiation. The Citizens Initiative is the opening offer in these negotiations. Then the industry will argue against that. Then the EU Commission might look for compromises. You don't start a negotiation with a bunch of compromises because then it will get so watered down you won't save anything. During the campaign, I had dozens of people contacting me telling me how wise and reasonable he is, how he's really pro-consumer and represents developers, and I should really talk to him. Great, let's do it. So this was my first encounter of him.
Oh shit, now this is actually really dumb. It's used car salesman garbage. This is shit. It's shit. Not only do I not want to back this, I'm going to actively tell people not to. That is awful. That is a horrible goddamn direction. That's awful, dude. No, eat my entire ass. The level of stupid that I just had to receive was like sitting on Twitter for 12 hours. This shit sucks. That's a really stupid ass move. That's an incredibly stupid ass move. I think this is ass. This is complete garbage. All of this can eat shit then. I drop the mask entirely. I have no qualms about that. They can eat my entire ass. The whole thing. That sounds stupid as shit.
Oh, yeah. I can see why people like him.
This is the most uneducated take I have ever seen in games.
I do have a bachelor's in criminal justice, which might explain why I'm coming at this from very different angles than he is. You know, focusing on people having rights and checking what consumer law actually says, rather than what's most convenient for publishers. The publisher would get to decide how they want to comply. Thor is not alone in developers trashing what I just said. I reached out to him, not expecting to change his mind, but to at least clarify things since he got so much wrong. If you're gonna hate us, at least hate us for what we're actually doing, not for things that are made up about us.
I got a message from Ross. There were many other misunderstandings in your video. It's clear that you hate the initiative, and I doubt I would change that. That is correct. I would encourage you to at least hate it for what it actually is. I do.
He says that so confidently. Oh yeah, you knocked it out of the park. You understood everything.
Would you consider reaching out and talking to Ross about it? No. And the reason why is because I found his entire statement over the YouTube incredibly disingenuous.
Besides video evidence going back 10 years, this is not a hard concept to grasp. I hate seeing creative works needlessly destroyed when people are trying to save them, and video games are where I see that happen the most. Of course I believe in what I'm advocating for.
The idea of getting it to pass with an easy win instead of pass because it's good is a problem to me.
That's not how politics works. Do you think things pass because they're good ideas? Tell that to people who still have lead in their water. Why would you call someone out, then run away from a conversation with them when they say there's a misunderstanding, but then go on to make more videos calling them out? But the irony is, I think he would have hated it even more if he did understand it. Because first, he doesn't see any of this as a problem.
Gaming isn't in need of saving. No, it's not a form of planned obsolescence. It's called the game no longer being profitable and we turn it off. No games are being destroyed here. These are live service games.
He supports games being destroyed.
I think live service games getting sunsetted is fine. I've always thought that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I have no problems with the end of a video game.
The Stop Killing Games movement sees any of these being destroyed as a problem, and they're exactly the kinds of games that would start being protected if the initiative passed. Now, a lot of these do have single-player campaigns, but I believe they all require more than a simple DRM check. He says over and over that his problem with the initiative is the wording, and it's vague. But there is no wording he would like that also saves games like these, because he's on the opposite side of this. I've also been told a big streamer, like in that group I mentioned earlier, you know, the kind that are so big they could end this, avoided talking about Stop Killing Games because of Thor's take on it.
Again, the issue isn't that somebody dare to disagree with Stop Killing Games, like anyone's allowed to have opinions, but when those opinions come from a misinformed place or from a place of bad faith argument, that's when people kind of turn against you. That's when Ross Scott felt the need to kind of chime in and try to correct some misconceptions that were caused by those videos that misinterpreted what this movement and initiative was all about. A lot of people agreed with Ross Scott's argument, and suddenly Pirate Software, aka Thor, became a controversial figure because of how many people felt like he poorly represented Stop Killing Games, whose cause is actually really positive: the preservation of video games and ensuring that video games don't get completely destroyed, completely delisted, and taken away from players' libraries. What Stop Killing Games is asking for is actually fairly reasonable. Leave games in just a functional enough state, especially if you're going to shut them down and kill them completely, that players can still have some semblance of access and ownership over that game and continue to play it, even if the shutdown games stop getting updates, even if their online functionality shuts down. At least find a way to make it still accessible offline, or give players the ability to kind of host their own private servers and continue on with their adventures for the product that they bought with their money. So much backlash did Pirate Software, aka Thor, garner from all this, and so much support that Stop Killing Games get from this, that news about this spread far and wide, and tons of people, including major content creators, started to chime in, including freaking PewDiePie, who out of the blue talked about how he fully supports Stop Killing Games. You've got Jacksepticeye, who came out with his own video that garnered, over 1.1 million views, that expressed his support. You've got Moist Critical here, who expressed his support for Stop Killing Games and his dissent against the way Pirate Software misrepresented the initiative, that garnered 3.5 million views, published almost 2 weeks ago when this whole issue began to rise. You know who chimed in most recently? Frickin' Minecraft creator Notch, who said that in support of Stop Killing Games, if buying a game is not a purchase, then pirating them is not theft, which is another way of saying if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing. A quote that has gained tons of traction, with game publishers and game companies consistently expressing their support for a future where everything's digital and where players don't get to have permanent access to the digital products that they purchase, a problem that wasn't an issue when physical media reigned supreme once upon a time. And then what's helped Stop Killing Games and harmed Pirate Software further is the way Pirate Software, aka Thor, has been responding to this whole situation, publishing numerous tweets that he's kind of been deleting and then posting again. And so right here we have the Act Man, who made a video on Stop Killing Games, who archived this one particular tweet, for example, that reads, "Sup, accursed farms," aka Ross Scott. "I put out 2 videos disagreeing with your initiative 10 months ago and haven't talked about it since. Now your initiative has failed, and you're blaming me for 33 minutes of the hour-long video covering it. Your community is out in force shitting up our streams and socials with hate messages, threats, and snide comments." The optics surrounding Pirate Software were already really piss poor, but the way he came out saying now your initiative has failed, which for the record, it hasn't. If anything, Pirate Software, by being the kind of common enemy that everyone has rallied against and that has led to Stop Killing Games getting the level of attention that it has, in an ironic way, Pirate Software has kind of been the anti-hero who saved the Stop Killing Games movement and initiative. But yeah, his attitude here, which is completely unapologetic and somewhat hostile, just didn't help matters for Pirate Software and only bolstered Stop Killing Games further. He continues, "Since you're so set on cutting up my responses into pieces to try to make me seem unhinged, I'm going to drop my videos here to show the actual context. There's also a massive pinned FAQ on the first video you can read through to see my reasoning." And then he talked about how he's willing to have conversations with level-headed people, but he feels like the way Accursed Farms or Ross Scott responded just wasn't level-headed, and it's caused a lot of toxicity. But what Pirate Software has to understand is that his 2 videos attacking Stop Killing Games, or kind of expressing dissent towards it, has also caused a lot of folks and fans on his end to kind of harass Accursed Farms, to harass Ross Scott, and to put down the Stop Killing Games movement, especially with information that isn't wholly accurate as to what Stop Killing Games actually is. He then deleted that tweet and then posted another right here that reads, "Been reading through all of the posts against me over my stance on the Stop Killing Games initiative. Tons of people calling me a liar, that I misrepresented the initiative, and lots of content creators dogpiling on this to get their pound of flesh. Let's dig into what I actually did and said. I put out 2 videos on August 6, 2024 and August 7th, 2024. These videos are linked at the bottom of this post. Many people have not watched them and are just calling me a liar or attacking my character. Give the videos a watch, read the initiative itself, make a conclusion that you aren't copy-pasting from social media. Monetization on these videos is disabled, so no, this is not employed to increase revenue. I just care about the subject and have rightful concerns as a person working in the space. For those who don't know, Pirate Software is a game developer, and as a game developer, he feels as though the Stop Killing Games movement, if legislation that is being proposed passes, then it's going to limit developers in various ways that he's concerned about, and that's the main argument that he's making. He continues right here in the first video. I go through what an initiative is, how it's not law, and how it's a starting point for this entire process. This helps people understand that this is to start the conversation for change and can adapt later. Then I go through the initiative and some of its goals from the official page for it. I then talked about the repercussions of them, should they be implemented. As written, all games need to be left in a functional, playable state. But the way Thor interprets this is that live services and online games are going to be forced to be maintained in perpetuity, when that's not what Stop Killing Games is proposing at all. Functional, playable state means giving players some kind of way to continue on some level playing the game, even if it's just them in a wasteland of an MMO. That at least is still functional and playable. And then if players are given the means to host their own servers and stuff like that, again, that's just a major win. And that's for online games, but it's important to note that we're also looking at single-player game situations where on day one, it requires a certain patch and whatever, and if those games are delisted or the service providers' servers go down and whatever, if the service providers aren't able to maintain the ability for players to download the stuff you need to download to access the game, then those games get lost as well, and they're no longer in a functional, playable state. And so it's that kind of stuff that Stop Killing Games is trying to stop. Just the complete eradication and destruction of video games that has led to a lack of preservation and a lack of consumer protection. But Thor here continues. Next, I bring up the crew and walk through the business around it, the sequels, the size of the player base at the time of sunset. I did this because it was called out by this initiative as an example of publishers destroying a game. I also harshly critique Ross Scott's wording in his videos because they disparage the lawmaking process and lawmakers, which doesn't benefit players or this movement in any way. I mean, the lawmaking process and lawmakers aren't perfect. There's a lot of just shitty aspects to that, and all of it that causes laws to be implemented slowly, the laws not catching up to very modern issues. I mean, those are fair complaints in my opinion, but anyway. He continues in the second video. I talk about potential scenarios where a studio could be abused if the initiative was implemented as written. It adds new paths for abuse, and that needs to be discussed to help hone this initiative into something that would do good without doing harm. But the thing is, the initial kind of argument against Stop Killing Games was, I hope this thing dies, rather than it needs to be honed in certain ways. There was like no discussion, no outreach to Ross Scott, and nothing of like, how do we find a way to make this initiative feel like it's good for everyone? Instead, he wished for this initiative to die. He wished ill will on the initiative as a whole, rather than trying to reach out and see if, he can work together with Ross Scott to come up with, maybe a version that he deems to be better, or something a little more comprehensive, and something that takes into consideration more factors that weren't considered, whatever it is. He then continues, I then explained that very few people in the game development space can actually discuss this from the other side due to fear of losing their jobs. A studio is much safer in silent dissent than they are discussing the drawbacks of your ideals. The recent attacks on our games is obvious evidence of this. Referring to how people have been going to listings of any games where Pirate Software might have been involved and leaving negative reviews, which is why Pirate Software had a post, I'm no longer working at off-brand games. People were attacking all of the games we were publishing and trying to mass review bomb them. You can dislike the things I say, but this kind of behavior is unhinged. And so, for example, you can see right here, a game developed and published by Pirate Software has recently garnered overwhelmingly negative reviews recently, with a 7% score from recent reviews due to this whole controversy. This is essentially people's way of protesting Pirate Software and how they believe that Pirate Software misrepresented a lot of what Stop Killing Games is trying to do, because a lot of people do believe that what Stop Killing Games is attempting here with this initiative is actually really positive, and it is very consumer friendly, and it offers protections that just currently aren't in place. And it feels like Pirate Software is trying to kill a good cause with bad faith arguments. Anyway, back to Pirate Software's post. It continues with, to recap, my main issue with this initiative is that it is broad in its approach to change the industry, and the exact language of the initiative, not the FAQ, requests that all games stay in a functional, playable state. This is not feasible for all games at a technical level and could potentially restrict developers from making online-only games like MMOs, MOBAs, and user-generated content games in the future. that list is not exhaustive, and it doesn't matter if you do or don't like those kinds of games. But again, what functional playable state is once again being misinterpreted by Pirate Software. Functional playable state doesn't mean it needs to be permanently supported. It just means that players on some level need to still be able to access the software and then be given the means to take that software and do what they want with it in terms of like establishing their own private servers and being able to carry that game forward on their own, because the companies who own those IPs and who kind of developed and published the now no longer functional product are no longer going to be making money from it. It's no longer going to be a thing that they're going to keep using. It's something that is no longer in the market. So why just completely nuke it instead of just letting players have a go at it and just let them do their thing with it? Yeah, he believes that this effectively has the potential to restrict future developers from making kick-ass experiences because it locks a weight on their designs. Even though there's an initiative that can change in the future, this goal is core to the mission and deeply disruptive, so it needs to be called out. And then he finishes by saying that he's not a shill for AAA companies. He left Blizzard in particular because he hates AAA, and that's why he became an indie developer, yada, yada, yada. But he does say right here that he's absolutely doubling down on his stance. And let's just say he hasn't made new friends from this post. In response, we have seen folks clap back with posts like this. You say the initiative demands that all games stay in a functional playable state and call that unfeasible, but you're taking the most extreme reading of that phrase. It's an advocacy starting point, not a mandate. The goal is to prevent avoidable game destruction, not force every online title to be preserved forever. Framing it as a threat to MMO and user-generated content games is a slippery slope argument that misrepresents the intent. I do agree with that, especially when we have been proven time and again that games that were initially said to be online only were given like offline patches when they died. That happened to Redfall, which got an offline patch after that game unceremoniously died off. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League eventually got an offline patch so that players can access at least like the campaign elements in single player mode. It's not the ideal way to play, but it leaves the game in some kind of functional, playable state. This continues, you say this could limit future developers, but most of the concerns is about games like The Crew, which could have been saved or patched for offline play, as we've seen many games do. It's not about banning online games, it's about stopping publishers from nuking entire titles because it no longer suits their bottom line. Pretending this will somehow cripple creativity or stop online design is false equivalence. That's kind of where I'm at as well. Pirate Software has also faced criticism for just like the attitude in which he's clapping back or the way he's arguing against Stop Killing Games. So for example, we got Josh Strive Hayes, who's a content creator on YouTube, responding to Pirate Software by saying people support who they like, not always who they agree with. By attacking your opponent, not their argument, you'll instantly turn people away from liking you or supporting your concerns. Your concerns are valid, you have knowledge, but abrasive clapbacks are hard to support. But at the same time, all of that clapback only generates more conversations surrounding Stop Killing Games. So again, in a weird way, Pirate Software, Thor, with the way he's been carrying himself and with kind of all of the hate that he's attracted, it has bolstered Stop Killing Games in a way that wasn't expected. People thought this initiative was done. And so now we're at a point where the European Citizens Initiative for Stop Killing Games has in fact cleared 1 million signatures. But there is a bit of a catch. Accursed Farms, aka Ross Scott, has put out the warning that it may be a possibility that a lot of these signatures aren't real. That means that we have to keep signing in overdrive mode to make up for them. Ross Scott then shared some stats about what is a good safety net of signatures to have so that even with fake signatures, we're still going to be looking at over 1 million signatures that allows this initiative to essentially be seen and to be tackled by the government. He said that I was given some stats about previous EU initiatives that passed and how many signatures were discarded. It looks like the low end was about 100,000 signatures and the high end was about 250,000. I suspect we'll be closer to the high end, so every legit signature helps. And he further detailed on this in this video titled Big Update on Stop Killing Games, where he expressed that let's not stop at 1 million, let's go into overdrive to make up for the fake signatures, and also warned that if you do put fake signatures into this petition, then that actually is a crime because the government is looking at this stuff and faking signatures is a crime. And like technically you can go to jail for that. So like literally don't do that. Don't fake fake signatures to support this initiative, because you could get in trouble and it just doesn't serve the initiative. It actually makes prospects worse, because if people assume the goal has been reached off of fake signatures, then people might decide, oh, well, like success, like the initiative is going through. We don't have to keep being active about this anymore, when being active is still required. Now, amidst all this, another entity that has become part of the conversation is none other than Video Games Europe, which is essentially a group that lobbies for all those major publishers, and shocker, they completely disagree with the Stop Killing Games initiative. That's when you know that you're doing something right. That's when you know you're doing something consumer friendly. Here's a statement that Video Games Europe put out on July 4th, 2025. We appreciate the passion of our community. However, the decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. Nobody's disagreeing with that. Stop Killing Games is not demanding that companies support online games forever. It's not demanding that companies aren't allowed to shut down their online games. What it is demanding is that consumers maintain access to the video game in some way, shape, or form, even if it's in some kind of offline mode, and that the product still remains on some level functional enough where players can take that now shut down product and carry forward with it on their own through their own private means. All that's being asked for is for the games to be preserved and for people's access to those games to remain active, not for the online functionalities or the company support for those online games to happen in perpetuity, because that would be unreasonable. The statement continues, we understand it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in compliance with local consumer protection laws. It doesn't matter how much notice you give someone, there's nothing fair about a product you purchase completely being nuked from existence and you having shelled out money for a product that no longer exists. I still have VHSs and CDs and DVDs and physical media from decades ago that I can still access today. Media that are still functional in some kind of functional, accessible state today. That is no longer the case with many video games, be it multiplayer or single player, especially when they have strictly been confined to the digital format. The statement continues, private servers are not always a viable alternative option for players, as the protections we put in place to secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable. In addition, many titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making these video games prohibitively expensive to create. Again, that last argument makes no sense when we have seen time and again developers being able to just output some kind of offline patch that enables players to continue playing the game in offline mode. Even if, again, it's not the best way to play the game, it is some functional playable state that players can still access. And then in terms of private servers not allowing the companies to enact protection measures and remove illegal content and whatnot, I mean, those are all activities that are not the responsibility of the game companies. You can just put in your EULA just to make it doubly clear that when a game gets shut down, like, you absolve yourself of all responsibility with that product because it is now something that players carry on. Like, you're not the one who have to host private servers. All people are asking is that that functionality is there for people to do with what they want. But at that point, it's their purview, not yours. And, you know, I'm sure laws can kind of ensure that that delineation is clear. Like, that is not enough of an argument to justify the lack of games preservation and taking products away from paying customers. It's just not. And then another new development is that Pirate Software has responded to all of the backlash after the numerous posts he's made. He came on stream and said the following.
County trying to say that our rescue is an animal horde. I've been called a pedophile, zoophile, rapist, corporate plant, degenerate, narcissist, nepo baby, and many other names. And they attacked all the accomplishments over my life, despite physical evidence to prove to the contrary. And they also went after every job I ever held, trying to say that I never worked them, or if I did work them, that I never deserved them. So I'm going to be honest with you. I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted. And I'll leave it there.
Now, look, on one hand, the harassment that he's faced is really unfortunate, and I wish that just wasn't a thing that happened. Alas, it's the internet. Even if you request that, you know, people don't harass a certain individual just because of disagreements, people just unfortunately are bound to do that. Ross Scott was adamant in saying that I do not want people to harass Pirate Software. I just want to clarify exactly what this initiative is and how that information has been misrepresented. So on that front, I feel him. On the other hand, by putting out statements like that, by having that level of hostility, you're only inviting further hostility. You're just inviting further clapback, further negativity, and further harassment, and you're only kind of making optics worse for yourself through that response. Saying stuff like that is not what's going to bring people to your side. You're only going to make things worse for yourself. But on the other hand, again, it's only bringing more positivity and more support for Stop Killing Games, to the point where the European Citizens Initiative of Stop Killing Games has not only surpassed the 1 million signatures required goal, but has shot way past that, to the point where this could serve as enough of a safety net for fake signatures that 1 million legit signatures might actually be here. As Ross Scott himself put it via his Accursed Farms Twitter page, the EU initiative has crossed 1.25 million signatures. I think 250,000 is the current record for invalid signatures thrown out on other initiatives. So we might be safe, but I could see us breaking that record also. The more margin we get, the better, just in case. So for those who haven't signed this and are in support of what Stop Killing Games is proposing, do sign the initiative, the petition, so that we can make triple sure that 1 million of those signatures are legitimate and this can be brought to the government so reasonable legislations can be enacted. And while the current initiative might be based in Europe, if the European Union passes legislations that forces companies to make games a certain way or to ensure there's certain protections for consumers, then it's easier for developers to make those changes across the board, across all regions, instead of making a different version for Europe and a different version for America. So this initiative succeeding in Europe essentially means succeeding across the world. So that's where we're at right now. Things are looking really good for Stop Killing Games, and I'll keep you further updated on developments. But in terms of like what's transpired surrounding this movement and how Pirate Software, aka Thor, has influenced all of this and all the shenanigans and craziness surrounding this movement and how much traction it's gained in just the last like week or two, this is kind of everything you need to know if you've been curious about what's going on here. And with that, I'd like to conclude today's news update. Thank you for tuning in, folks. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation, on Stop Killing Games, on Pirate Software's arguments, and how you think this will all go, what prospects look like for Stop Killing Games and potential legislation that will be inspired by it. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.